Well, hello, Woodman. My name is Lauren, and welcome to our online service. If this is your first time joining us, or you've been here for a while, we are excited that you have chosen to worship with us today. Now, with summer coming to an end and fall just around the corner, we are launching our community groups. This is a great way to grow relationally with others as well as spiritually. So if you would like more information or to sign up for a group, visit woodmanvalley.org/community. We grieve over the violence and the loss of lives that happened that rocked our nation 20 years ago. Yet we know God sent his son to be close to us, to show mercy in times of joy, but also our deepest sorrows. So as we gather together in worship, let us center our hearts around Christ and declare his great faithfulness.
I am holding on to faith, 'cause I know you'll make a way. Oh, I don't always understand, I don't always get to see, but I will believe it, I will believe it. You make mountains move, you make giants fall, you use songs of praise to shake prison walls. I will speak to my fear, I will preach to my doubt. You were faithful then, you'll be faithful now. Standing on your word, calling heaven down to earth. You will fight my enemies, this will end in victory, and I will believe it, yes I will believe it. You make mountains move, you make giants fall, songs of praise to shake prison walls. I will speak to my fear, I will preach to my doubt. You were faithful then, you'll be faithful now. Oh, you were faithful then, you'll be faithful now. And I know that I know you never fail. Shake prison walls, and I will speak to my fear, oh, I will preach to my doubt. You were faithful then, you'll be faithful now. 'Cause you make mountains move, you make giants fall, you use songs of praise to shake prison walls. I will speak to my promises. Time and time again, you have proven you do just what you say. And the storms may come and the winds may blow, I'll remain steadfast and let my heart learn when you speak a word, it will come to pass. Great is your faithfulness to me. Great is your faithfulness to me. From the rising sun to the setting same, I will praise your name. Great is your faithfulness to me. Yeah, yeah. Age to age, though the earth may pass away, your word remains the same. Oh, your history can prove there's nothing you can't do. You're faithful and true. Though the storms may come and the winds may blow, I'll remain steadfast and let my heart learn when you speak a word, it will come to pass. Great is your faithfulness to me. Yeah. Great is your faithfulness to me. From the rising sun to the setting same, I will praise your name. Oh, great is your faithfulness to me.
I put my faith in Jesus, my anchor to the ground, my hope and firm foundation. He'll never let me down. I put my faith in Jesus, my anchor to the ground, my hope and firm foundation. He'll never let me down. I put my faith in Jesus, my anchor
Well, hello, Woodman. Today we are beginning a new series entitled Overland from the Old Testament book of Exodus. And if you're new to this stuff, or if it's been a while since you've been back there in the OT, let me get you up to speed, set the stage for what is a truly magnificent story. The Israelites had been enslaved for some 400 years by the Egyptians. And God heard their cry, and he sent for them a deliverer in this man named Moses. At the start, however, Moses was not necessarily a crowd favorite. Moses was an Israelite by birth, but he grew up Egyptian royalty. And at the age of 40, he murdered a guy. And then he spent the next 40 years living on the lam with lambs as a shepherd in Midian, until such time as God appeared to him in a burning bush and told him, I'm going to send you back to get my people out. Now, the Pharaoh at the time, regrettably, didn't see things that way. He wasn't having it. He had a hard heart, and he would not let the people go, and he only relented after God brought 10 devastating plagues upon the Egyptians. The 10th being the worst. The firstborn in every home died. The Israelites were spared as they followed God's instructions for what would be called the Passover. God had told Moses at that burning bush that the Israelites, the slaves, would plunder the Egyptians. And as the Israelites were packing up to go, they asked of their neighbors for silver, gold jewelry, and clothing. And they happily obliged. And in doing so, prove God's word faithful. We begin our study in chapter 13. The Israelites are setting out from Egypt. It is, as the title of our message suggests, a new beginning. They are leaving behind everything they had ever known and heading into territory they had never been. They did not know it then, but this journey would end up being 40 years, a journey in which God would provide for their every need and be faithful to every promise he had ever made. For us as a church, this weekend marks a new beginning of sorts too. It is our, admittedly, sort of artificial in a way, but we call this our kickoff weekend because all of our ministries that had either paused or changed up over the summer resume their regular programming in the coming days. Our prayer is that in this new ministry year, that we as a church are going to grow deeper in our faith. And this weekend could very well be a new beginning for some of you. I'm sure that we've all had starts and stops in our faith journey. My hope is that this start begins something special. So if you would, before we open God's word, let's pray. Heavenly Father, how awesome to see that video at the beginning and to think of all the things that you've done in our church. And God, to realize that that's but just a small sampling. And God, with anticipation, not knowing what the year holds ahead, God, we go into it knowing that you're going to be faithful, that you're always about your work, and you're going to get some things done. God, would you begin something in us today? As we open your word, God, would you teach us from it? As we look at this example from so long ago, teach us today. Help us to hear your voice. And help me not to make any mistakes. And be glorified, we ask in Jesus' name. Amen. if you have a Bible, go ahead and turn to Exodus chapter 13. And what I hope we're going to see here are sort of three points of exhortation, looking at the Israelites' life and their pattern, what they're doing, three things that we can take away. Whether you're new to the faith or whether you've been walking with Jesus for a while, these are three things that should be a part of our daily life. And I'll tell you this, if the Israelites had just kept to these three things, their journey would have gone a lot better. The first one is this, the need for trust. The need for trust. Look at verse 17, Exodus 13. It says, when Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them by way of the land of the Philistines, although that was near. For God said, lest the people change their minds when they see war and return to Egypt. But God led the people around by the way of the wilderness toward the Red Sea, and the people of Israel went up out of the land of Egypt equipped for battle. Now, the first thing there that is actually the last thing I want to address is when it says they went out equipped for battle. Most commentators want to point out the fact that the Hebrew doesn't actually say that. The Hebrew more specifically says they went out in formation. And it comes up a little later because there's no mention in the text of them having any weapons. You know that the Egyptians didn't arm their slaves, and we're told that they got silver, gold, jewelry, and clothing, but no mention of weapons of any kind. So even if they had something, they were primitive, but they marched out as one. Just keep them in the back of your head. The second thing is that the exact path the Israelites took on the Exodus has been lost to history. I mean, any campfires, any trash, any hotel receipts, they're all long gone. And there's just certain parts on the journey we can't say exactly where they went. We can make some educated guesses, but in the end, for some of these days, that's all it is, an educated guess. What we do know for certain is that their first day would have caused some heads to scratch because as they set out, every one of them would have been expecting to turn left. And there was Moses pointing the other way, and they turned right. The shortest distance to where they were going would have been to head north through the land of the Philistines, by the road of the sea. Now, we know from history that route was actually a very heavily militarized one. The Egyptians had fortresses and outposts on it, and then even if you got past them, you get to what God mentions, the land of the Philistines. So God sends them in the other direction. They're expecting north. God says, go south. Why? Well, it's the end of 17. Lest the people change their minds when they see war and return to Egypt. Which, if you're familiar with God's deliverance of the people from slavery in Egypt, if you're familiar with the 10 plagues, you know that the Israelites didn't have to do a lot of heavy lifting. God was the one who miraculously delivered them from the world's greatest superpower at the time. But now God seems to be concerned that the Israelites are going to have conflict with the Philistines, by comparison, a much smaller enemy. And there are two things about it, I think. One, at this point in history, the Israelites actually had no beef with the Philistines, and neither did God. And as you look through the Old Testament, it's understandable that you would think God does a lot of fighting. There's a lot of killing. God's battles were never indiscriminate. God was very pointed about those that people should fight, and if he shouldn't fight them, he didn't want them to at all. But second, notice here, it wasn't even an issue of victory that seemed to concern the Lord, but a vision. God was not worried about any battle that might occur and what would happen. God's fear was that when the Israelites saw the enemy, before any swords were drawn, that the mere sight of opposition would cause them to turn and run back to Egypt, the place they had been enslaved for 400 years. Even though God had miraculously delivered them from 400 plus years of slavery, his concern is the first appearance of opposition will cause them all to run back to where they just come from. Which is, I think, when you look at the story, when you think of the hardships, it's crazy to think about. I can appreciate maybe being scared, seeing an enemy in front of you. But surely we can go somewhere else before we head back to that yoke of slavery. Especially when we have God on our side. But when I think of my own life, and I have to imagine some of you, I've done that. Have you ever made commitments? You're all excited about what you're going to do for the Lord. You're on fire. You're jazzed up, and you go out. And the first hiccup sends you running back just to where you'd come from. We have starts and we have stops. I think the fact is, we each, to a degree, have an inability to perceive our own ability. Whether it's the middle-aged guy who thinks he can play hoops like he did in college, the young girl who tells herself she can have a couple drinks at a party and nothing will get out of hand, or me when I grab that hot plate and think I can get from the counter to the table, only to realize I can't. The Israelites are marching out of Egypt free for the first time in 400 years. And God is concerned when they see opposition, they'll run back to slavery. Have you ever done that? Now, what is commendable about the Israelites, and as we study their journey over these next weeks, not everything they did was commendable. But what's commendable here is that even though the shortest distance was north, even though God had already proven his ability to deliver them from anything, when God leads them in the exact opposite direction they would have thought they should be going, we see no hesitation, just trust. The words there are, they went the way of the desert into wilderness, but they trusted God at his word, and they went. Do you do that? Let's just take one example. And it'd be fun to throw it at like high school and college students' feet, but actually it's kind of for all of us. Remember Jesus, Matthew 26:41, watch and pray that you may not enter into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. When Jesus Christ, who loves you so much, he gave his life for you, tells me that, do we trust him? He's affirming, right? He's like, I know you want to do what is right, but you're not as strong as you think you are. Watch and pray that you don't enter into temptation. I mean, it's profoundly beautiful because Jesus is not questioning our desire. Have you ever found yourself when you've dropped the pass, when you've made the mistake, and you're like, I really want to do better next time, and you mean it? Jesus is not the person that's like, well, you keep doing this. No, Jesus is like, I know you do. I know you do. It's just that he recognizes our weaknesses more than we do. The Israelites trusted God at his word and followed him. Do you need to do the same? To take what God tells us and act upon it. I mean, are there some areas that you are not prone to trust? What are they? Why? What would it look like to change that? And to let the words of these songs we sing, to let the pages of this book that we study strengthen your faith so that even when it seems, I think we should go this way, God, and he sends you somewhere else, that you trust. If the Israelites had continued to trust as they did that day, the pages we'll study in the weeks ahead would be different. We need to trust. Here's the second thing we see. We need to remember. Look at verse 19. It says, Moses took the bones of Joseph with him, for Joseph had made the sons of Israel solemnly swear, saying, God will surely visit you, and you shall carry up my bones with you from here. We need to constantly, I think, remember those who've gone before us. Now, when it says bones, this is Egypt, remember. It's more like the mummy thing, right? Joseph had been embalmed. And Joseph believed by faith that Egypt wasn't their home, that God had a promised land for him. And as Joseph lay dying in Egypt, he made everybody swear, you promise me, you don't leave me here. You take me with you. Yes, Joe. No. I want you, pinky swear. You do not leave me here because God is going to get us out. It's what we studied not a few weeks ago, right? Hebrews 11:22. By faith, Joseph, at the end of his life, made mention of the exodus of the Israelites and gave direction concerning his bones. Though Joseph had not seen it, he believed it would happen. And for the Israelites, hundreds of years later, some 400 years later, God was true to his word. Do you think somewhere in that span people could have doubted? You're a kid, and grandma or grandpa, you're walking, they're like, I want you to look there because when we leave, we got to get him out of that tomb. Grandma, we've been in slavery for hundreds of years. And Grandma and Grandpa died. But then your parents are like, when we get out of here, someone got to remember to take Joseph. But then your parents die. And then your kids ask you, what's with that tomb? I don't know if I have that kind of confidence. I might kind of default, well, Grandma thought. But imagine it happening. And Moses pointing at you. Go get Joe. We're out of here. Just as Joseph had believed and God had promised. It's sort of lost, I think, in our culture. But we would do well to spend more time with older saints and to call to mind those who have gone before us. We also studied in Hebrews, right, 12 verse 1, therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. And again, that's not a cloud of witnesses that are watching us in the center of the field, clapping us on. No, there's people who've walked the journey that you and I are on right now and have done it faithfully. And I think a lot of us naturally gravitate to spending time with those who are like us, similar life stage, similar interests, and that's awesome. But what would it look like for you to connect with an older saint? With one who has gone before you, to learn from them, to remember that you're not the first person to have to stand where you're standing. Countless men and women have walked that path before. Certainly, it can be done as you read the really super old saints in this book. It can be done by reading some of the biographies of some of the old saints that have gone before us. It could be done by spending time with an older saint in our church. It could be done for a lot of us just by sitting down with Grandma and Grandpa, laughing at their ineptitude with phones, and then asking them stories. I tell you, my own life, when I find my back up against the wall, when I want to talk to somebody, the unfortunate thing is some of those I would most like to talk to are gone. They were the examples. They were the pillars in my life. And for the Israelites, those pillars, those examples, that Joseph from 400 years earlier saw this day coming. We need to remember we're not the first. And I'll tell you, the evil one, when we get to those places of challenge, likes to divide and conquer, to tell us that we're the only ones and we're alone. And when he does, I think we need some of the veterans of the faith to tell us stories of the faith, to encourage us to have faith, to let us know they're still standing. If the Israelites had a better memory, much of what we're going to study in the weeks ahead wouldn't have happened. We need to trust God at his word, and we need to remember those who have gone before us. And here's the third one. We need to rest. We need to rest in him. Look at verse 20. It says, "And they moved on from Succoth and encamped at Etham on the edge of the wilderness. And the Lord went before them by day in a pillar of cloud to lead them along the way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give them light, that they might travel by day and by night. The pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night did not depart from before the people." This is a theophany. It's a visible manifestation of the presence of God. Not just a picture. No, the presence of God himself is in this pillar. By day, the pillar appeared like a cloud. And it boggles the mind to try to imagine it. At night, it was like a pillar of fire. We're not rocking two pillars. We got one that, depending on the time of day, just looks a little bit different. And it's funny, skeptics try to go through and kind of identify what could have been the natural phenomenon that created this moving pillar that was there for 40 years. And if you think you got something in your head that's convincing, awesome. For me, this is a miracle. We've got a pillar of cloud by day, a pillar of fire by night. And the presence of God in their midst at least did two things for them. I mean, it gave direction. When that pillar moved, they moved. When it stopped, they stopped. But I think maybe even more profound is that pillar gave them security. At night, it gave light. And at any given moment, they knew where God was at. I mean, it must have been something to behold. And as we'll see next week, it was a terrifying thing to be on the wrong side of it. But imagine waking up each day. Your kids say, all right, do we need to pack up? Or are we leaving? Nope. Still there. When will we leave? When he does. When will that be? Not sure. Imagine having a nightmare. Waking up panicked in a cold sweat. Or maybe you couldn't actually get to sleep. That thing that causes anxiety, that thing that's keeping you up, the thing that you were worried about. And you kind of get up quietly, not to wake others in the tent, and you're just going to get a bit of fresh air. And right there, burning, tried and true, a presence of God Almighty. Hasn't left you. He's with you. It must have been something wonderful. And yet what is so hard to comprehend, and what we from time to time keep trying to remind each other, right, is for each and every Israelite that witnessed that pillar of cloud, that pillar of fire, they could not even imagine at all what it is we who are in Christ have today. For them, the presence of God was there, but it was external. For those of us who are in Christ, the presence of God is here, inside of us. If you have confessed Christ as Lord, if you believe that God raised him from the dead, if you acknowledge your sins and you invite him to forgive you those sins, that spirit, that flame that lit the night sky then, that raised Christ from the dead, dwells in you. Never to leave you. Never to forsake you. And yet, I'll say to my ever shame, sometimes I forget. To me, I think there would be something nice about walking out into my driveway and being like, oh, right, the pillar. And yet every Israelite that followed that thing would say, you have it infinitely better. How could you ever forget? We studied it not long ago when we began 1 Corinthians, right? Do you not know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit within you, whom you have from God? And obviously, Paul knows that they know. It's just a little spicy. Do you not know? What must have caused the disciples' heads to almost explode is when Jesus told them in John 16:7, I tell you the truth, it's to your advantage that I go away, for if I don't go away, the helper will not come to you. But if I go, I will send him to you. The Spirit that dwells in us is a tremendous upgrade to what the Israelites had leading them for 40 years. And you and I think we could rest in that presence more. If you know Christ as Lord, the power that raised Christ from the dead dwells in you. We are not following some external pillar. We have the presence of God inside of us. We are being led by his Spirit within. And yes, he still does give direction. True, not an external pillar that's moving on ahead. But those of us who've been walking with Jesus Christ, I think we all would have to concede moments where we just knew that we knew that we knew. Whether it was to make that call, give that hug, turn down that invitation. And how amazing that no matter what you face tomorrow, you can ask God for help. But even more so maybe than this amazing internal GPS thing that God has wired into us, is the security that comes from knowing you and I are never alone, even when very much by ourselves. The Spirit of the living God is in you. When you walk through the valley of the shadow of death, he is with you. Do you need to listen more? Do you need to ask more questions? I say to my own shame that when my back's up against the wall, I long for people who've left this world. And sometimes I think God's like, hello, I'm still here. Do you need to trust what he says and rest in him? Tonight, to rest in him, that you are his and he's in you. We have a story to share that really brings this all together. It really is a story of a new beginning. It's one where those involved had to at points trust. It's one where those who were a little further on in the faith had to look out for those who were a little behind. And it's one where when the valleys of this life were too wide and too deep, they had to rest and wait in God. Let's watch it now.
So about 6 years ago, I met my wife, Caitlin, and we started going to Woodman. She'd been going to Woodman for about a year, and she asked if I wanted to join her. And at the time, it was something I was hesitant about, but wanted to check it out. It'd been a while since I've been a part of a church. About 2 years in, a year in maybe, we decided to look into community groups and see what that would be like.
So Jill and I started the community group, like Matt asked, and didn't know anyone. And this young couple, not their dating, comes as Chris and Caitlin. And before long, Chris asked Caitlin to get married. We go to the wedding, and they continue coming to group. But Chris is not a believer, and we're praying for him regularly, including him in the group.
Honestly, I think Chris did a really good job of trying to be open to listen. It felt to me like everybody was really very open and understanding to listen, to be a part of that with him, and not try to force anything, but really just try to be his friend and love on him the best that we could.
It was definitely not what I expected at all. You feel like the outsider. You don't have much to talk about. You don't have much to connect with, and coming to the lichens, it was nothing like that. It was comfortable. They made you feel welcomed, and I never thought that community group would have led to the friendships that it has.
Our community group has been through some really rough times. There was a pandemic, you've probably heard of that, but during that time, 3 miscarriages, stillbirth, and then the death of one of our community group members, so 5 deaths. So I got really kind of familiar with Psalm 23 and walking through the valley of the shadow of death.
About a year and a half ago, my wife and I were pregnant, and we were expecting. And 7 months in, one afternoon, kind of all changed, and we lost our little daughter. Both Jill and Dan, they were there the next day as we were at the hospital, and not just Jill and Dan, but everybody. The calls, the texts, the flowers. I was so quick to blame God. And I can remember as the months went on that if I was so quick to blame him for the bad, then why can't I praise him for the good? Over time, events like that, friends, people, the church, I think it all just culminated.
Jill and I were out to dinner with another couple, which we almost never do. It was so much fun that night. And I had my phone out, and I see this text come up from Chris. I look at it, and it says, "Hey, Dan, wanted you to be the first to know. I accepted Christ tonight."
Yeah, so it was Saturday night. We were at church, and Josh was teaching out of Hebrews. It was the Get Started series. And what he was going over that night really resonated with me. I felt like I finally needed to take that leap of faith.
When Chris made his decision, Dan reached out and he was like, "Hey, remember we were going to do that thing?" And he pretty quickly was like, "Hey, what do you think about talking to Matt about could all 3 of us, kind of be dunked at the same time, so to speak?" And so
it was 92 when I accepted Christ. So it's been a while now. And I just realized I need to really affirm that appropriately through baptism. I invited Chris and Jason, let's do it this time. And they said, yes. And yes, I want to. Yes, please, let's do it.
So Chris, why don't you share a little bit of your story and why you want to be baptized?
Yeah, thank you. I am being baptized today to solidify that journey that I've begun with Christ. I want to not only show my commitment to Him, but also to a church that I believe is a shining example of what loving well through Christ looks like. To share what I've learned and be the example that I've been shown here.
So based on that profession of faith, it is Dan and I's absolute just privilege and joy to get to baptize you in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
That's the journey. It's not exempt from struggle. It's not free of doubt. But the community of faith that rallies together, God is doing things in our midst that we wouldn't believe if we were told. Chris sat here week after week for 6 years. And then it clicked. And he's gone from death to life and will be with Jesus forever. And we get to be a part of it. And we need to keep that in mind. I'll be honest, personally, this week was not a stellar week. Last Sunday afternoon, we received some terribly tragic news from some old friends. I just can't put into words. I can't even imagine. And then Tuesday, don't tell my coworkers, my day job, I got thrown a couple curveballs that weren't awesome. And then, 4 out of the 5 of us in the Lindstrom home all got sick. I got this crud. Don't worry. Kimberly's fine. She's fit as a fiddle. And you get those weeks, and here I'm trying to study about trusting God. Remember his faithfulness. Rest in him. And I understand it here. But I wasn't feeling it. And about an hour before the service, I got news of something that I've been praying for. And then if you'd told me a week ago, I would have told you with a straight face it never would have happened. Even in our questions, God is at work doing things that we wouldn't even believe him if he told it to us. I realize that the events of the last year and a half have wearied us. I know that the trials of these days are not particularly awesome. But God has not wrapped up this world yet, because we're still here. And we need to trust him. We need to remember those who have gone before us and God's faithfulness to them. And we need to rest in his abiding presence, even if that be the only thing we can do that day. My prayer is that this could be a new beginning for many of us, and that God would do things in this ministry year ahead that we would not believe if told. Do you want to start that journey with us? I hope that you do. Let me pray. Heavenly Father, there are many across these campuses who have been laboring and waiting. And God, I pray that story gives them faith, gives them confidence to rest and wait in you. God, it is in many ways just turbulent days we find ourselves in. Would we trust in you? Would we remember we're not the first generation to walk through stuff that's hard? And God, would you be at work through us, your people, accomplishing the things that you have from eternity past decreed that you would do in and through us. Give us hope. Give us faith. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thus saith the Lord. Jesus, Jesus, how I trust him, how I've proved him o'er and o'er. Jesus, Jesus, precious Jesus, oh, for grace to trust him more. Oh, for grace to trust him more. My hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. I dare not trust the sweetest frame, but wholly trust in Jesus' name. My hope is built. My hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. I dare not trust the sweetest frame, but wholly trust in Jesus' name. Christ alone, cornerstone, weak made strong in the Savior's love through the storm. He is Lord, Lord of all. When darkness seems to hide his face, I rest on his unchanging grace. In every high and stormy gale, my anchor holds within the veil. My anchor holds within the veil. Christ alone, cornerstone, weak made strong in the Savior's love through the storm. He is Lord, Lord of all. Christ alone, cornerstone, weak made strong in the Savior's love through the storm. He is Lord, Lord of all. Yes, you are. And he shall come with trumpet sound. Oh, may I then in him be found, dressed in his righteousness alone, faultless stand before the throne. Christ alone, cornerstone, weak made strong in the Savior's love through the storm. He is love.
And what an incredible truth that we can declare that He is Lord over all, no matter our circumstances, no matter what we may be going through. We can trust Him. You can trust Him. And if there's anything that we can do, if there are ways that we could pray for you, let us know. Come forward after the service. We would love to pray with you. If you're joining us online and you need to reach out, take that step right now. And if you're online, you can go to woodmanvalley.org/prayer. The prayer guide is there for you. Join us in prayer. For those of you that are here with us in person, as you leave, our ushers will hand you one of these guides. Be in prayer. Be in prayer for God to move in mighty, mighty ways, because He still is. Or trust that He is up to something. And if we can come alongside you in that, we would be honored to do so. But as you leave, let me read these words over you. And now to Him who is able to keep you from stumbling and to present you blameless before the presence of His glory with great joy. To the only God, our Savior, through Jesus Christ our Lord, be glory, majesty, dominion, and authority before all time, and now and forever. Amen. Go in His grace and go in His peace.